Hello and welcome to World Have Your Say. Welcome also to New York. Tomorrow is the 9th anniversary of the September the 11th attacks. And this week, Americans haven't just been looking back at what happened 9 years ago. They've also been reflecting on their relationship with Muslims and with Islam. This comes after two stories have been dominating the global news agenda and your discussions. You'll of course know about this proposed Islamic Cultural Center, which will be built several blocks away from where I'm standing. It's about 200 or 300 meters away from the corner of Ground Zero. A recent Washington Post poll says the majority of Americans don't want it to happen. We'll be discussing whether that gets in the way of America's commitment to freedom of speech. And then, of course, we have in Florida Pastor Terry Jones. He now says he suspended his ban of Quran Day, but that hasn't stopped thousands of Afghans taking to the streets to protest at what he's doing. Most Americans are horrified by what he threatened to do, but some are still defending his right to do it. So we'll look at those two issues and, of course, discuss more broadly whether Americans feel positive towards Islam. There are new research out saying that perhaps more so than in the last 9 years, Americans feel ill will towards Islam. Lots to talk about. Here's how to get in touch.
Call us on country code 44 2070 83 72 72. You can text us from your mobile phone on country code 44 7786 20 60 80, or you can email us at worldhaveyoursay@bbc.com, or add a comment on the blog at worldhaveyoursay.com. Well, joining me here in New York are two guests. Bill Byrne is a construction worker who's based in New York. Nice to see you, Bill.
Pleasure's all mine.
And we also have Susan Lerner from the New York Neighbors for American Values organization. Hi, Susan. Thanks for coming in. Let me read you one email that's come into the BBC, and those of you watching won't be surprised to know we've received thousands on this subject. This came in from Tavia on Facebook. She says, as usual, the majority of Americans seem to react on emotions instead of from a point of knowledge. They are using the actions of a few terrorists who happen to be Muslim to judge all Muslims. Susan, do you think that's what's happening?
Unfortunately, I think that's true. There's a tremendous amount of misinformation that has been disseminated, very lurid accusations, cherry-picking, isolated comments, a particular thing. And it's part of a pattern, unfortunately, that we're seeing and having to face in our country of these lurid accusations, a bit of character assassination that goes out, makes the headlines, puts a particular person under tremendous spotlight, and then all of a sudden, whoops, we were wrong. It isn't quite the way the headline said, and people simmer down. It's not the best way to conduct our public discourse, but unfortunately, because in part of the 24/7 news cycle, there are elements of our society that want to exploit that, and they're doing a darn good job.
Interesting that Fox News came out in the past few hours, one senior executive saying if the pastor does burn books in Florida, Fox News isn't going to be covering it. I don't know if you'd like to see the BBC follow suit. And we're going to be going to Pakistan, Egypt, Baghdad and Iran during World Have Your Say today. But Bill, first of all, let me bring you in. You've been telling us just before we came on air that you're opposed to this Islamic Cultural Center. Why are you opposed to it?
Well, I find this imam very suspect. He seems to speak out of both sides of his mouth. I've read some of the stuff that on his multiple websites that all of a sudden they're all hidden because little by little as they come out, you can't access them no more and read what he truly says.
Well, let's look at what he said in the New York Times this week. He says he believes in interfaith dialogue. He believes in Americans of all faiths coming together and understanding each other's beliefs. Isn't that something you would support?
I would support that. I would. But I wouldn't turn around and make a statement that says that if the mosque is moved, look out because there will be repercussions. I wouldn't turn around and try to pretend I'm making peace and at the same time talk about there is more innocent Muslim blood on American hands than there is American blood on Al-Qaeda's hands.
As if he were the only one to have said that. Many
okay, well,
people have said that.
But he's the only one building this building down here. He's the only one that actually wants to tear down a building. And
well, let's be clear, and we'll have a look at it a little bit later on the program. The building which he's talking about transforming with the help of several $1 million is in not a great state at the moment. It's a former coat factory. The paint is peeling off it. It doesn't seem to be used for anything. It needs a little love, whether that comes from the imam in question or someone else.
It's not 2 blocks away from Ground Zero. It is Ground Zero.
Well, we can debate that. It definitely is 2 blocks It's 2 blocks from the ground. It's 2 blocks from the ground zero perimeter because I walked it yesterday. And we'll see it.
What do you
in a
consider
moment.
the ground zero perimeter?
Well, we'll talk about that in a minute. Let's bring in guests. Let's bring in guests in Iraq and in Cairo. First of all, we can speak to Father Rafiq Gresh, who's behind the St. Cyril Church in Cairo. Sir, thank you for joining us. What's been the reaction in Egypt to the discussions and the actions that America has been watching this week?
Yes, the reactions in Egypt are getting more tense. Today was the Bayram feast for the Muslims, and in most mosques there were some manifestations that were asking to ban what is American and what is Christian. And the situation is getting more and more tense, especially when they heard about burning the Quran.
But sir, let me read you this email we've received from Gideon in Israel. He posted at worldhaveyoursay.com. He says, I totally condemn the Quran burning if it happens, but I'm appalled and dismayed and not hearing any voices condemning those who threaten to resort to violence against innocents because of the actions of some obscure pastor. We've seen a statement from the Taliban saying if the burning goes ahead, they'll target any Christians. Do you think that they should be condemned as much as the pastor is being?
All act of terrorism, of fundamentalism, has to be condemned because this is not the way where you can have peace in the Middle East or in Afghanistan or in Pakistan and even in the United States. The tension is getting higher and higher between the West and the Islamic world. And we have to find an end to that, to put a word of peace in these critical situations.
Do you condemn it, Susan? Do you
condemn the violence? Absolutely.
Violence?
All extremism is what the extremists are what have gotten us into this unfortunate situation. Extremists of all stripes and of all backgrounds. People should step down. And here in the United States, people need to spend this weekend reflecting on who we are as Americans and what our core values are. And our Constitution is founded, our country is founded on religious freedom, diversity, and equality. And this is a good time to reflect on how we can live up to those ideals.
Phil, do you think that you're living up to American values of tolerance?
I do. I haven't hurt anybody lately. You know, I don't go around, you know, blowing stuff up. I don't go around burning books. I don't do any of that. And I find this book burning thing pretty amusing because people all around the world are jumping up and down now, and they want to retaliate against Christians. They want to retaliate against American soldiers and Americans because of the acts of one man. Yet I'm told that I shouldn't judge all of one religion because of the acts of many. Not just 19 people that took some airplanes, but if you look at what actually happens, and it's all over the news, it's all over the internet, in Egypt, there was a person burned to death, and I think it was his uncle was stabbed to death because of something.
Well, Bill, actually, we're going to talk with our guest in Cairo a little bit about
How
this.
come nobody stood up for that? And in Iran, there's a poor woman going to be stoned to death for something, and they couldn't even prove she did it. But nobody's up and down jumping about that.
Well,
you know,
if you'd listen to World Have Your Say on BBC World Radio. Right.